welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom, and I have been tagged in a video which is possibly one of the hardest tag videos I have ever done. Now, I recently actually did my top 10 horror franchises. Now, Sean Erschen was the guy who originally did this video, and he didn't actually do it as a tag, but I was so kind of like, that's a great idea, I thought I'll do mine, and kind of made it into a tag. But now he's made the kind of like the opposite tag, so to speak, and tag me, so here you go. So this is the top 10 worst horror franchises. To be clear, what a horror franchise is it has to be at least 2 entries, so 2 films ultimately, or you could have a film and a TV show, I suppose. And we are talking about the franchise as a whole, as I will explain in my list. I'll kind of, my idea about what that is. So I'm going to go through my top 10 horror franchises. Now, I'll say this, like the same thing I said in the top, but my favourite horror franchises. I am not a slasher fan, but I don't necessarily think they're the worst horror films either. Now, and I also have to prefix this by saying there are franchises that I simply haven't seen any kind of movies of. I mean, a couple of people have done this tag already, and they've mentioned things like Evil Bong. I haven't seen any of them. I have no interest in that franchise, to be honest. So I haven't seen any, so I can't comment on stuff I haven't seen. So this really is only kind of going to be basically stuff that I've actually seen entries of, basically. And even then, there are a couple here where I haven't seen all of the movies, but I've seen most of them. So let's get on with it, and we'll talk a little bit about it as we go through. The first one might surprise you because actually it features one of my favourite films, and that is the Lost Boys franchise, of which there are 3 movies. And why do I say this is one of the worst franchises if it contains one of my favourite films? This is because the original movie is so strong as a standalone piece, and then later on they decided to make 2 additional films. So there's a Lost Boys trilogy, and this is one of those instances where they decided to kind of cash in and make kind of spin-off or sequels when there was no real need to, and they're so different in tone. I mean, obviously they're a lot later, so Lost Boys is infamous for being very 80s. So these ones are obviously a lot, you know, a lot kind of like more recent, so they're not in the 80s anymore. But they just feel like really trashy movies, and really just kind of like, they have none of the charm of the original. And now when you think of Lost Boys as a franchise, the 2 most recent entries are very poor. So to me, it's kind of it has soured the franchise. There was talk of doing a Lost Girls originally, but that hasn't happened. But as it stands at the moment, I think that the Lost Boys as a franchise now has been damaged by the kind of these 2 sequels. So I really don't like them. And the next one is actually a similar story, and this is the House movies, of which there are 4. Well, interesting story with that one. Originally there was only 3. But the UK repurposed another movie and actually made it into a House movie, and then it's subsequently kind of been retroactively added. So House 1 and 2, the original House is a good movie. Now, I'm not going to say it's a great movie. Why? And this is why maybe it's number 9 rather than number 10. I think Lost Boys is a great movie. I think House, the original, is a good movie. House 2 is an okay movie because it's kind of a horror comedy, but it's not horror at all, really. It's just a supernatural comedy, and it's a little silly if you ask me. House 3, this is the kind of the odd one, because this was originally just a movie called The Horror Show, and it got kind of repackaged before it was released as House 3 in the UK, and that's what I'm counting it as, and I think it's been re-released now as House 3. And I think that's just a generic as hell movie. I don't like the 3rd one. It's just really, really generic. And then we have House 4, and that one was just so crap. I mean, it completely... It has this William Cat returns from the first movie, but they've bozzed up the continuity. You know, these are the only movies that are really connected. and yet they cocked up the continuity by kind of contradicting things from the first movie, and the last movie is utterly shit. It's utterly shit. There you go. So that is the House franchise. The next one is the Children of the Corn franchise. And very similar to House, really. The first movie is good. I don't think it's great. The second movie, I think, is not too bad. But they just get crap. Anyway, you got the guy who played Zeke Anderson in Tour of Duty, which I like. He's in one of these movies. I can't remember which one it's in, but they're really just pretty crap. It's just there's a lot of these now, which is maybe why I kind of rank this a little lower than House, because there's more of them, and therefore they've kind of diluted what would have been an okay first movie to a lower score because there's more rubbish ones. And it's the same thing with number 7, Lake Placid. Again, an okay first movie with some reasonable special effects. This is kind of one of these ones that have been co-opted into schlocky sci-fi movie of the week type films where it's just a shitty CGI crocodile with typical kind of like TV actors rehashing the same plot. And yeah, it's pretty terrible now, I've got to say. And even the most latest entry, the Lake Placid Legacy, I thought was they tried to kind of make it a little bit more serious again, but still I don't think it's much good. Number 6 is the Camp Blood series of films. Now, I haven't seen all of these, to be clear, so this is only based on the ones that I have seen. But this is a low-budget slasher movie, and they're just really kind of like no reason to have these. I don't think. I don't think they kind of. They're not offensively bad, I don't think, but there's no bright spots in this series of films. They're just kind of very cheap, run-of-the-mill slasher films, and I don't understand how it's got so many of them now. I haven't seen all of them, like I've said, so maybe it's a little unfair of me, but because I don't like them, I'm not going to watch all of these films. So this is a hard list. So once again, they just kind of have kind of like disappeared into nothingness for me. The next one for me is Resident Evil. I was a huge fan of the games, or the first few games, and I kind of like the first movie. Although I never really understood why they just didn't adapt the games, to be honest. So I kind of like the first movie. And they've just got progressively crapper since then, unfortunately. And they're just like a CGI mess. I couldn't even be bothered to watch the last. I started watching it and I just turned it off. I have seen all of them, apart from the last one. And I've seen some of the last one, but it was just so rubbish. I started watching it and I thought, I just can't be bothered. So I just turned it off, ultimately. So I'm kind of glad that movie's kind of done a... I quite liked... Mila Jovovich in the role, but the actual films themselves they just outstayed their welcome a little bit, and every time they felt they had to kind of up the ante and stuff like that, and it just ended up being a little trashy. Next one for me is the Puppet Master. Now I recently saw the actually what I think is the best in the franchise, if I'm honest, which is the Littlest Reich. And I like the first movie, which probably not as much as the Littlest Reich. So this is top and tailed with some okay films. But it's just been so many other crap movies, and I kind of watch the Axis of Evil ones, and they're just so rubbish. Yeah, these are cheesy B movies, but they're just terrible. Number 3 is The Howling. And once again, you have a great first movie. I mean, I like The Howling. It's not my favourite werewolf movie, but I like it. And then, strangely enough, I don't mind the second one to a certain extent. I appreciate it's one of those like guilty pleasure movies, but I kind of like Sybil Danning, so there you go. But there is some truly crap ones in this franchise, truly crap ones. So they're just terrible. Now my top 2, some may feel I'm cheating a little bit with this one, but this is what I think. These are smaller movies. Now, you can do a low-budget movie and do it well, but these next 2 series of films are awful. The first one is Robert the Doll franchise, of which there have been multiple movies, which I think is trying to ride the kind of the coattails of Annabelle and Chucky to make a kind of a haunted doll thing. And this is made by a production company in the UK that I have likened to the Asylum in the States. And yeah, they're just crap. I don't understand why they keep making this. It must be their best franchise. It must be, but there's nothing redeeming about it. They're just crap, shit acting, shit effects, poor direction, and and just not a very interesting story. But my number one franchise, and there's only 2 films of this, so it's barely a franchise, but there's multiple films. And I have to. I'm trying to. How I kind of work this out. I'm trying to think what are the lowest scores that I have given, and then sort of taking the mean average, so to speak. And there's 2 films, one of which was offensively bad, and the next one was mildly better, but still I only gave it like a 3 out of 10. And this is the hospital movies. Now, amusingly, Lisa Loves, who does the some videos for this channel, she actually did her 31 Days of Horror in October, and I suggested her watching the original hospital movie as a kind of a gag, because I knew, because it's the worst one I've ever reviewed. It really is. And it's a 2013 movie, and it's just it's meant to be about haunted hospitals, but there's just rape scene after rape scene after rape scene, and it's just unnecessary. The effects are atrocious. The technical side of it's terrible. The audio's not recorded properly. The acting is bad. Everything about it. There's no redeeming features in it whatsoever. And we had a second film, which had a little bit more story to it, I would say, but it was still just a load of old bollocks, to be quite honest with you. So there you go. So that is my my horror franchise. Unmemorable movies, the worst ones. Like I said, there are a few good films within those franchises, but to me, if I have to look at the franchise as a whole, and especially if if the franchise has almost damaged what is for the most part the original movies, for example, like the Lost Boys and all the ones I've mentioned, it damages the brand, and that's how I kind of am thinking about it. So this is a really tough tag, and you've really got to be into horror to do this tag, I would say. So I'm not going to tag anyone in this video, but honestly, anyone who wants to do it, feel free. Like the other video that I did, but it's a really tough one because it's, generally speaking, if you don't like things, you're not going to watch it, so it's hard to kind of do your worst franchises. Anyway, so there you go. So this was a tough video. Thank you for Sean Erschen for tagging me. Please go check out his original video. I will leave his channel in the description box below. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.